Haya,
Good evening,
hello.
good afternoon, good morning, depending on when and where you're watching us from. My name is Collins Maina, and it's a beautiful evening here in Nairobi, Kenya. We have a great show lined up for you guys, and I'd like my fellow panelists to introduce themselves as we begin. Jeff.
Can I be heard?
Yes, we can
Yeah.
hear you, Jeff.
I'm Jeff Minor, a student at KU. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Natasha.
Hi, people. My name is Natasha. Um, Colin said it's a beautiful evening, but it's a cold one. It's a very cold one in Nairobi. But I know we're going to have fun in this show today.
Yeah, thank you for that, Natasha. And as we start the show, I'd like to make a clarification for our viewers that we have two shows. We have State of the Continent and we have African Corner. State of the Continent is a show where we tell you about the happenings in and out of Africa. Sorry, in Africa, where we tell you about the news happening in Africa. And African Corner is a talk show where we hold talks and discussions with various people on the things affecting our continent and the matters affecting Africans in general. And before I start, I'd like to say that this past week we had the pleasure of going to Tanzania. We were at the Pastoralists Women Council with Washira and Kimani, and we basically talked about our African identities and what it means to be African. It was a great experience for us, the first time some of us left the country, and we hope for more events to come, and we'll keep you updated on that. Yeah, so now we can go on to the main topic of discussion of the day, starting in Rwanda, where President Paul Kagame has waived visa requirements for all Africans visiting the country. In his speech, he said that as an African, if you want to go to Rwanda, the only thing you need to do is board a plane and you'll be charged nothing for going to Rwanda. This is in following the steps of Gambia, Benin, and Seychelles, who have also previously waived visa requirements for Africans going to the continent. He spoke during the Global Summit on Trade and Tourism and said that as Africans, we need to realize that there are great opportunities for growth within the continent, and that the African middle class has kept on growing, and we need to realize that for it to keep on growing and for us to push our boundaries even further, there is need for free movement within the African continent. And she said that the move was aimed at promoting movement of people and trade within the continent. And in the same vein, President William Ruto of Kenya has announced that by December 31st, all Africans entering the country of Kenya will not need visas for their entry. Moving on now to Tanzania, where the German president paid a visit to the country, and he visited the museum of the warriors of the Majimaji Rebellion. And if you are a good student of history, you'll remember that in the early 19th century, there was a great rebellion against the German occupation in the country of Tanzania. A lot of our gallant African fighters lost their lives during that struggle because the German soldiers, what they did is basically they burnt down their crops and forced the Africans into a life of hunger and misery. And the German president acknowledged the atrocities committed by his people or the former German colonial government against the Africans and promised to pay reparations to all Africans affected by the war in Tanzania. Now, building on that story, the German president also paid his tribute to Chief Mbano, who was a very famous chief during the struggle in the early part of the 20th century in Tanzania. He laid a wreath at his grave and promised to return back his remains, which had been shipped to Germany after the war. And in the same vein, the British Prime Minister also visited Kenya this past week, and he has expressed his deep regret on his country's role in the suffering and torture of the Kenyan people. He, however, did not offer a formal apology to the Kenyan people like his German counterpart did in Tanzania. And moving on now to the western part of Africa. Where in the Nigerian... Sorry?
Allow me to cut you short and just build
Yeah.
up on what you said about the British representative in Africa, in Kenya. There's the Pokot community was asking for a certain amount of money as compensation for, you know, all those things that the British did while they were in Kenya, while they were during the colonial period. But I was, you know, just my opinion, I was thinking, is that the kind of apology or the kind of reparations that you want from them? Really, we are going through, I know Kenya, times are tough. Yeah, the economy is really bad. So do we just want them to come and say, okay, we are sorry and leave? Is that, I mean, I get it, the acknowledging that we did this, we brought this, we did this to your culture and all of that, of course. But there's also the how can they actually, more than just saying we're sorry, how can they actually show that they are sorry? No. Instead of just going around and saying, you know, you want them to give us this amount of money, how about they do something? You know, we have a lot of debts. What to say, therefore, they can give us something and like write off our debts and say, oh, well, iwacha tuwasamehe, something like that.
So, Natasha, what you're trying to say using a lot of words is that you need money.
Now, listen, this is the thought that the elders from the Pokot had, yeah? I think they asked for 10 trillion or 10, I think it was 10 trillion. But like, sasa wape kila mtu, you know, every affected family. Of which, let's be honest, do you think that money is actually going to those families? If at all it's given out, do you think it will get to those affected families?
I think if it were to be given out, it will probably end up in the hands or pockets of someone within the political class.
Exactly. So instead of such a situation, instead of actually like giving out this actual money, this amount, and saying aya ndio hii tumewapea sasa peani hao, what if waende World Bank waangalie mko na deni ya China, aya wacha tuwasort hiyo, ama let us sort this certain amount like this percentage, you know. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I hope you guys are seeing where I'm coming from. That is the kind of apology I'd say is something that is actually helping Kenyans and not just another situation of money came, money went.
I don't know if I heard you right, but you claimed that they were demanding 10 trillion shillings.
Was it trillion or billion? I'm not sure. Some amount. That's why at first I was very hesitant on saying the amount, but it was some amount of money they wanted from the when the king came, they claimed they want that certain amount from him, rather from Britain.
Yeah, that will go a long way into easing our debt. And Natasha, what can you tell us from your end is happening in the African continent?
I'll just stick here to Kenya with our king. We had an incident here where a female soldier tripped. She was rushing to open the door for the king and the queen, and she tripped and fell. What was very impressive, two things stood out for me here. What was very impressive was, one, the way she just stood up and continued what she was going to do. Two, the level of maturity of people around her. No one was laughing, no one was, it didn't even become a meme from Kenyans. We know Kenyans. Kenyans jump onto things and make them trends. And at first, when I saw it, I was really fearful. I was like, oh no, now she's going to trend for something that she's probably already feeling somewhere about it, and she's going to have to maybe talk to her superiors about it. But Kenyans, you're doing well. We have not made it such a big deal. And there was the army officers that came online to defend her, to stand up for her. It was such a nice from how I saw it. But I just have a question. I just want to know from both of you, if you were there, if you were the king or our president, and such happened, your level of maturity in Gekubali, you just move on and just go. Would you help her? Would you look at her like, what's going on? Mungefanya nini?
Knowing myself, I would probably have been dying of laughter at that moment,
Excuse me.
but say sorry later.
Yeah, yeah. That's very Kenyan. Ata Jeff.
I see. Mimi, I think me ninge still stand still na
Uh-huh.
niache iendelee. But
Ah,
unakumbuka the words tulikuwa naambiwa na wazazi, hivyo
yeah,
tulipatana na mama yako, maybe the
yes.
king will have gotten to have a second wife.
Ah, I don't make that joke, but ni sawa.
I, okay. On my own, I think I'll talk about the budget corruption that is going on in Kenya. I think the taxpayers 1 billion is going according to the budget. The state officers are paid 3 times more than their salary. But I heard from one state officer that she said that she was a woman. She said that it is written in the budget, but she has not received the money. So I want to hear your reviews about that issue.
Jeff, please come again. I didn't hear you quite clearly.
Okay, I was talking about. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
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 yes.
we can.
I was talking about the budget corruption that is happening in Kenya. According to the taxpayers, there have been 1 billion that they contributed to the tax. It has got, according to the budget, it has gotten to the state officers. According to the budget, they are paid more than 3 times of their salary. But from one state officer, she said that it is written in the budget, but she has not received the money. So I wanted to hear your reviews about that issue.
Yeah, we live in a country where corruption is the order of the day, and I suspect that there's someone somewhere enjoying her salary while she's suffering. But I hope for a time of change. I hope there'll be a time where we'll not associate being Kenyan with being corrupt. But at the moment, that's the state we are in, and we keep on fighting, trying to kill this evil in our country.
Because it's even so sad when these people, as we know they're being paid this certain amount, and then you hear from a few of them around, they're telling you it's actually not that way. It's a third of what you guys are thinking, and now you're torn between, are you lying, or is the person I trusted to leave the country lying? It's betrayal in the city, in this case, betrayal in the country. It's so sad, and it's not even a Kenyan thing. It extends all the way to Nigeria. I read somewhere just this evening about a budget that was prepared, I think, at a repetition by um, the incoming new government. Yes. Now they have provisions in that budget for SUVs, for, I hope I'm going to pronounce this, Ayat. Now the thing is, this budget is around 2.8 billion dollars, which I think is a lot. I hope it's even billion, it's not trillion. I hope it's billion, it's not trillion US dollars. And one of the provisions that was there was Ayat that is worth around 6.1 million US dollars. At first, people are very, people had to critique it, because what do you mean a presidential yacht worth this amount? And we have students who have not been able to go to school because they cannot afford it. We have people who cannot afford healthcare and stuff like that. And you have this kind of luxurious thing, provision in your budget. That's sad as a country. And they came out to clarify, and they said it was for the Navy. It was, I mean, when you see such message, it's so sad, because Africans are working really hard to even make ends meet for, just for their family. So to hear cases of leaders being the people that are taking away what is rightfully theirs, it's almost annoying.
Yeah, it is indeed a sad state of affairs, and it's not getting any happier anytime soon
Okay,
because,
Collins,
yes,
Collins,
yes, Jeff, go ahead.
before you proceed, I have a question. If you're in the government, I have a question for both of you. If you're in the government and you have a chance to be corrupt, can you take it?
That looks like a trick question, but honestly, I would not. Because why would I steal 1 billion shillings? Something which in my entire lifetime I cannot use. And I'm stealing it at the expense of my country suffering. So personally, I would not.
I'm supposed to answer this question. Good. I don't think I'd sit down and plan and say, aya, sasa kuna ngapi imetengwa this amount, okay, I'm going to take a certain percentage. No, 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 no. And there's some things when you become a leader, I like to think it's something, you serve above yourself. You're serving other people. So there are even some very outrageous, luxurious things that people put in place to make their life more comfortable when they're leading. I don't get it. You suddenly want big cars, you suddenly want to be paid to sit in a meeting where you're supposed to sit there. Are you getting? Like either way, you're supposed to be that meeting, but you want to be paid for being there. That is what comes with being a leader anyway.
Yeah, Natasha, we hear you. We hear you that you're not going to be corrupt if you end up in a leadership position in future. And we hold you to your word.
Hopefully,
You say that on this day and this day, you say that you'll never steal. Yeah.
That's what we must do. Each other accountability.
We have evidence. The internet never forgets. Yeah. And now we can move on to the western part of Africa, to Nigeria, where the president apparently wanted to buy a yacht for $6 million. He presented a supplementary budget to the parliament, in which was included $6 million provision for a presidential yacht, something which shocked the Nigerian populace because at this moment, the Nigerian shilling is under the Nigerian naira, is undergoing a very rapid devaluation as compared to the dollar, and the inflation rate at Nigeria currently stands at 26.7%. So all these things withstanding, the Nigerian president still feels like he needs a yacht to travel within the seas of Nigeria. The lower house of parliament rejected this proposal vehemently, and in fact the funds were directed to education, to the loan board of Nigeria. And in the words of one Nigerian lawmaker who said that the president cannot be riding around in a yacht when his citizens are struggling to survive in a canoe. However, something shocking is that after the proposal was rejected, the president's spokesperson was quick to reject that the proposal was not in fact laid by the president, and that the yacht was not for the president but for the Nigerian Navy, something which is, if you understand Africa, not very easy to accept. However, we salute the Nigerian House of Parliament for standing firm with their people and preventing misappropriation of their resources. Yeah, I can see a comment here from Kimani Mwangi saying perhaps he wanted the boat to float his development ideas. Kimani, yeah. And maybe the yacht was for El Nino. Yeah, maybe they are also experiencing floods in Nigeria.
I don't know.
And the president is not one to step on water on his way out of his house. So,
and actually, it wasn't from their government. So I'm just excuses, It was for the Navy, and then we inherited. Which one is it?
apparently, the president initially, it was his idea to purchase the yacht But after the deal was cancelled, he found a
Mhm.
scapegoat or a loophole within the Nigerian Navy, saying that the proposal was to buy a yacht for the Navy, but not for his personal use, something which is very hard to buy into.
Come on.
Yeah. I can see Jeff has just joined us. Jeff, what else is happening from your end?
Sorry for the low connection. Uh-huh. I think I wanted to add about the floods. I was not. Have you talked about it?
No, we were talking about floods in Nigeria, not in Kenya.
And both floating ideas.
Okay. In Kenya, about 2,500 people have been displaced in Mandera about over floods. And a few weeks ago, we were advised by the government that we prepare for the floods, and they promised us that they will ensure that we have boats to help us maneuver. And then a few days ago, they said that the El Nino will not happen. And then like yesterday, they said again that the El Nino will happen. So I think the government are not very sure about what they are saying, but they are just giving positions. So I wanted to know if do you think that Kenya is prepared to take over the floods?
Yes, Jeff. Last we heard they were buying boats. I don't know if the boats have yet to arrive in Kenya, but personally, I don't think we are prepared enough if at all the El Nino were to occur. But our leaders also always have something to say. Yeah, Natasha, as we wrap up, please give us your final story on the happenings in Africa.
Just to build on the story, we've had this from the time I was a very young girl. We've always had cases of every time, especially in the drought areas, every time there's a lot of rain, there's flooding and all of that. So why is it that years with all this knowledge, nothing is being done to mitigate such cases? When you say you're going to buy a boat, fine, but long term, how are you helping Kenyans? Long term, how are you making it better for Kenyans? Anyway, just allow me to say this one, Collins. I hope you won't get angry. But it's something that is exciting me, especially seeing as now Rwanda is going to require a visa to go there. I think in December I am going to Rwanda. So mnizoe hii November peke yake. I'm going, I'm going. Kendrick Lamar is set to come here to not here. He's set to come to Rwanda. He will be headlining an African tour known as Move Africa. Move Africa is meant to drive investments in the communities that are hosting it, and also to showcase the best of Africa in terms of talent to the world. And I think it's a good thing because we have seen what happens when African artists collaborate with the non-African artists. Like the song we had, Rema and Selena Gomez, it absolutely blew up. It was a good song, yes, but the opening up of the continent and just showcasing this is what we have, this kind of talent. It's a good thing, in my opinion. So that is what Move Africa is set to achieve, apart from just creating employment opportunities for whoever in those communities. And what is going to happen? Rwanda is going to host that for the next 5 years, but they're adding new countries to the list as the year goes by. So by 2025, they're hoping they're going to have added 5 countries. I'm sorry for the noise in the background. They're going to add 5 countries, and we are hoping that Kenya will be one of them because why not? Why not? And yeah, I don't know. I was expecting to talk about Sauti Sol in the name of concerts.
Yeah, Sauti Sol had their ultimate concert this weekend after entertaining us for more than 17 years, I think. They had their last show in Nairobi this weekend, and the only thing you can do is hold on to the memories you had of them.
Yeah.
Jeff, as we wrap up, can you give your final comments and maybe if there's a burning
Natasha,
story you want to tell us? Jeff, before you go on, I
okay.
can see a comment from Shiko Mwangi saying, does he harbor any development ideas to begin with?
Ah, you guys are smart. That was a good one.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Jeff,
Okay. I wanted to say that I had a post that Nairobi was ranked the best city to live in 2024. Do you think that is true in Africa? That's
Jeff, do you think that is true?
is it true according to the taxes you are paying.
I think Nairobi is very beautiful. I don't know, especially if you're walking around Nairobi and you're not rushing anywhere, you're not in a hurry to get something done, do jam and everything. You're just walking. You're just taking your time to look around. Nairobi is a very beautiful city. But the most in the world?
In Africa, I'll
Oh,
say
Nairobi,
in
in
Nairobi
Africa.
is
Africa.
indeed a great place to live in, and you only
Yeah.
find that out when you get out of Kenya.
Mm.
Like I
What
told
was
you
it?
earlier, I'm not
Oh.
bragging, but we were in Tanzania earlier,
hmm
and it's only when you get out that you realize of the things you're missing or the privileges you have when you live within Nairobi.
I mean, I'm not that well exposed, but I'd say in East Africa, I'm sure yes, Nairobi. So I have to get Inje more than East. Maybe I should go to South Africa and see.
Yeah. Thank you. Natasha, any final comments?
No, other than it was just lovely being here after a very, very long time.
Yeah, it was also nice having a discussion with you guys, but that is all we had time for. Stay tuned and you wait for Wednesday when we'll be having our African Corner show.
Bye. Good night, guys.